Hello everybody. I want to welcome you to the second video I'm doing in this series on the way of mastery, and as part of Teach Only Love. My name is Bougie, and the spiritual practice, spiritual enterprise that I have is called Teach Only Love, because that is, ultimately it's my goal in all aspects of my life, but it's especially my goal as part of this process that you're seeing a piece of here. So to those of you that haven't seen me before or come to my videos before, welcome. Thank you for being here. I do want to mention that I gave a full introduction of myself and my teaching approach and a number of different things in the first video. So if you haven't seen that, please check it out. I won't be repeating all of that here, but I will give you kind of a little bit of an overview of it. Also, I want to apologize to anybody that watched the first video, because throughout the whole thing, I had a fan blowing, and I didn't notice it till almost the very end, and I didn't want to interrupt the flow to turn it off because it had been on the whole time anyway. And it's more annoying when it comes on and goes off and comes on and goes off. So it's now off. So a much quieter video for you to watch. I do wear headphones while I teach, because I don't do that in person. In person, I can play music live, but I like to have music on for setting the mood and for kind of grounding me in. And when it's copyrighted music without the artist's permission, I can't put it on YouTube. And so I listen by myself here. So I'm going to put these in and continue talking. So I just want to check my notes, get myself back on what I wanted to talk about. If you haven't, please like or subscribe to this video series, because that helps me get the message out and expand it to a wider audience and to more people. This particular video will focus on lesson 1 in the way of mastery, which again, for those of you that are new to this, that is this book. This is what it looks like, or at least most versions look like this. This is the recent, I think this is the one that you'll get if you order it. In other words, it's the most recent version. So just to give you an overview, I told you my name, I told you a little bit that I told you that I'm doing this as part of Teach Only Love. And that practice will be, over time, putting out more videos on different books. And I may even at some point expand into doing videos on certain topics, spiritually related topics, life-related topics, and how to integrate this material into your everyday life. If that's something that interests you, please let me know. You can contact me at the email address in the box below. I also didn't announce in the first video, but want to mention here that I do accept donations. That is how I help to pay for my time here. And YouTube, there's a cost to being a part of YouTube Premium, and it's just, I think it's worth the value. So if you find it's valuable and you're moved to do that, please do so. If you cannot afford to do that, that's fine too. And no donation is too small, so whatever you feel called to do. And I am very grateful for anything you provide. At some point in my life, I'd like to get to a place where I'm doing this full time, and I do this live and in person. I have a couple classes I teach in the Madison, Wisconsin area. If you're ever here, look me up and check me out. I work at a facility called the Awakened Center, and we have other practitioners there as well, from different traditions: Reiki, sound healing, breath work. The other thing I didn't mention in my first video is that I didn't go into a lot of detail about the other traditions that I've been a part of, but I did talk about my Roman Catholic background and that I'm no longer practicing Roman Catholic or consider myself one. But by their definition, I'm certainly not, because I have a very different Jesus that I work with than they do. And I also wanted to mention that I did spend quite a few number of years, probably 3 or 4, in my late 20s and early 30s, exploring Buddhism, committed to the Buddhist pathway. It really, really called to me. Ultimately, I found it to be a little bit, and this is just for me, I don't think people that continue to engage with it for a life's work feel this way, but I found it to be a little bit dry. I needed the warm fuzzy of Jesus and Mary, and the tradition that comes out of the Judeo-Christian tradition is more helpful for me, but there's still elements of Buddhism I use in my daily life, and I just love it, and I love the perspective that it gave me and how it shifted me, and it shifted my view even of Christianity. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that I do also have a shamanic practice. So that background, that may not come through or be as obvious, but if you're curious about that part of my practice, you can contact me at the email address below. I do offer Chakra Illuminations, which is the balancing of the chakras and a removing of any chakra blockages through my shamanic practice, as well as I also offer individual life coaching, guidance, spiritual coaching kind of sessions. If you're interested in that, we can do a one-on-one and we can talk about that. Just contact me. So for today, with the Way of Mastery, what I want to talk about is lesson 1, and it's called The Way That Calls You Home. And you're going to hear me refer to Jesus as Jeshua or Yeshua. I didn't mention, in the first video I mentioned how he came through in the channel material. What I didn't tell you is that the original Aramaic, which is the language Jesus spoke, in that language, it is written as Yeshua. And of course, I did mention the Greeks translated it into Jesus, and that's how it came down to us. But so you'll hear me use both versions. If you hear that term, Yeshua is Jeshua. And this is channel material that came forth between 1994 and 1997. I'm wondering if there's anything else about the background I should share at this point. If I think of it, I'll mention it. If there's more that you'd like to see here, you can either check out the first video, or that's pretty comprehensive, or email me and I can answer your questions. So we're going to start on page 2, which is lesson 1, The Way That Calls You Home. That's where it begins. And I'll begin reading, and my approach with this is I read until I feel guided to comment or speak, and then I do so, and it's just sort of a stream of consciousness, whatever comes out. I'm very, very intimately familiar with this material. I've taught much of it before in my local classes, and in fact, everything you're going to be exposed to will have been taught by me in those classes by the time we get to it. And where was I going with that thought? I just had a text, as I'm videoing this with my iPhone, I had a text pop up on the screen, so it distracted me, and I apologize. So let's continue with lesson 1 now. Lesson 1, The Way That Calls You Home. Now we begin. Beloved friends, I come forth to abide with you where you believe yourself to be. Just to be clear, this is Jesus speaking. This is Yeshua. This is Yeshua as channeled by John Mark Hammer, now known as JM. So what I'm reading here is the transcription of the original channeling. I come not for myself, but for you. I come not to teach you, but to love you until you choose from the depth within your own being, to set aside every illusion you have ever given credence to, and to remember the truth, which is alone true. Now, he's going to further develop that idea of the truth that is alone true as we go through. So it'd be appropriate, if you haven't heard it referred to that way before, at this point, if you have a question, you may have a question about it, that would be appropriate. So just hang with me and we'll get to that. For indeed in that hour, there is a transcendence of all that knows limitation. There is a transcendence of all that knows coming and going, birth and death. There is but the mind of Christ within each of us, as a spark of divine light, as a sunbeam to the sun, rests eternally in perfect communion and communication always. So here he's introducing some metaphors that he's going to elaborate on and use repeatedly throughout. And one of them is that our relationship to our source, to Creator, to God, to divinity, to the infinite all, to the Great Father, whatever you want to call it, the Great Mother, our relationship to that is as a sunbeam is to the sun. So, in other words, we are not different than that. We emanate from that. We are an expression of that. We come forth out of the love of God as the love of God, and we are the love of God in form. And this material will continue to point us in that direction. The great secret is this is the state of your reality. What is? What is the state of our reality? The state of our reality is that we are in perfect communication and communion with God always. In each and every moment, you abide in perfect communion with the whole of creation, since all things are but temporary modifications of the one fundamental energy that I have chosen to call the Christ mind, the offspring of the Father. So the Christ mind would be the sunbeam, and the Father would be the Son, obviously. Often in the way of mastery, and this is especially true of A Course in Miracles, and again, I referenced in the first video that I'll be referring to all different types of related material from different traditions as needed as part of my teaching. And I'm losing my train of thought now, I apologize. Something that I was going to make a reference to A Course in Miracles. It may come back to me, so bear with me, thank you. So, continuing now in the fourth paragraph. Beloved friends, I come to where you choose to be. And if you would choose to open that place within the heart and within the mind in which you can communicate with me directly, I will meet you there as well. So here Jesus is offering us, he's offering us a relationship with him. If you'd like to pursue that, he's essentially saying that he's open to that, and I'm just going to get rid of these text messages that are all popping up on my screen because they're distracting me, sorry. But he's open to that relationship with us and available for us whenever we wish. Where I was going before with the Course in Miracles is that can be a particularly dense material, dense literature, dense body of literature to get through. And but what you find often with A Course in Miracles is if you read a sentence and you have a question, like, what is he talking about? What does he mean? Often the next sentence or two will define or explain that and answer your questions. Same in the way of mastery. And you saw an example of that with my comment on perfect communion and communication. And he went on to explain what that is the great secret of your reality. That's the is he was talking about. So continuing then, page 2. What is important then by way of beginning is to consider this simple fact. Your experience is always the effect of where you choose to focus the attention of your consciousness, itself being unlimited forever, embracing all the many dimensions of creation. You abide in that which embraces all things in all ways and at all times. In truth, you do not know separation, birth or death, gain or loss. So now that paragraph needs a lot of unpacking. So let's go back to the beginning. What is important then, by way of beginning, is to consider this simple fact. Your experience is always the effect of where you choose to focus the attention of your consciousness. Let's stop there. So he's explaining what should be self-evident to begin with, and that is our experience, any experience we have in life in this world, is the effect of where we focus our consciousness, where we put our attention. We all know that what we focus on grows, and what we don't notice may as well not even be happening for us, because it's not part of, we don't notice it. You know, if something happens in your life that you don't notice, let's say you're driving down the freeway and there's an accident on the side of the road and you don't see it, then it may as well not have happened for you, because it didn't register. And where we focus our attention determines our experience. If you saw the accident, you noticed it, you responded to it, that would entirely change your experience from the other option. Itself being unlimited forever, embracing all the many dimensions of creation. And itself there is referring to consciousness. So consciousness being unlimited forever, he's telling us our consciousness, the consciousness that we are, is unlimited forever. That means it's timeless. That means it's never been born and it never dies. It's always been here, because God has always been here. Here is kind of a funny word to use, as if there was a here before there was God, and that God came to the here. No, there's only a here because of God. Embracing all the many dimensions of creation. So there he's further expanding the idea of unlimited consciousness as not only being timeless, but expanding into every dimension. That means that our consciousness right now is in multiple dimensions. We're not aware of it because we happen to be at this time focused on this dimension, but it's possible to expand your consciousness to explore these other dimensions. People have been doing that for ages, right? So it's an experience available to all humans. Embracing is a key word, because he'll come back to that over and over, as well as part of our spiritual path. So he's telling us in the last sentence then that we abide in that which embraces all things in all ways at all times. If that doesn't sound like love, I don't know what would. Abiding in that which embraces all things in all ways and at all times. That implies without judgment. That implies without discrimination. That implies without rejection. So God, our source, embraces all things in all ways and at all times. In truth, you do not know separation, birth or death, gain or loss. So another big sentence, that is the last one that I'll be repeating in this paragraph. We're not separate. It's impossible for us to suffer loss. And when we were never born, and we don't die. Now, to be clear, our bodies appear to be born and appear to die as part of the dream. And while we're focused on them with our consciousness, they are a real experience for us, but they're not real in terms of the broad expanse of who we truly are, because they're temporary. There is nothing in this world that is not temporary. It's all temporary. In case you haven't noticed, nothing lasts. There might be things that outlast us, like mountains and the earth, things like that, but even those have their limits. We all know mountain ranges wear down eventually and new ones pop up. So everything is always changing in this dimension. As you focus your attention on reading these words, recognize how you, as an infinite being, have deliberately chosen to participate in a form of experience. You will read words that carry meanings, certain meanings for each of you. And you each will color that meaning according to the perceptions that you have chosen to place value upon. Excuse me, I'm just going to move my keyboard up here so I've got more room for my book. So we will color the meaning of our experiences based on what we choose, what our perceptions choose to place value upon. So you're in a room and you're having a conversation with somebody, and there's a distraction over here because there's some workers repairing something in the wall, and maybe over on this side of you there's 6 feet away another conversation going on between 3 people, and it's a little bit loud and kind of intruding on your conversation you're having. Where you put your attention is going to determine your experience. If you just focus on the person in front of you, you might have a slight experience of these 2 side things going on, but your bulk of your perception is going to be there. If you focus your attention in one of the other places, then your attention naturally is pulled from one of the other places. And you do that based on where you place your value. If your value is on being annoyed by something going on next to you, then you might place your attention on that. If your value is in what the person across from you has to say, either you're going to remove yourself from that situation so you can hear them, or you're going to just hear them. Does this mean that some are ahead and some behind? It only seems that way. In reality, each of you is equal. Each of you chooses from your infinite freedom to attract to yourself certain vibrational frequencies, certain forms or qualities of experience. That freedom is what you abide in always, from before the foundation of this world and long after this world ceases to be. So there he's telling us about our freedom, the freedom we have to choose our own experience, that it's infinite freedom, that we can to attract to ourselves certain vibrational frequencies. What does that sound like? That is the law of attraction, right? Right there, it's a law of attraction 101. In each and every moment, you cannot be a victim of what you see, and nothing is outside of you. Remember how I said at the beginning some of these ideas you may, I didn't say it in this one. I'm going to say it right now. I apologize for digressing once again, but this is important for me to emphasize for those that didn't see the first video. A little willingness is all you need. And you need to remember only this. These are the guidelines for listening and reading this material, for listening in this case. You need not believe the ideas. You need not accept them. And you may not even welcome them. Some of them you may actively resist. None of this will matter or decrease the efficacy of the ideas. Some of the ideas you will find hard to believe, like maybe perhaps the line I just read, and others may seem to be quite startling. None of this will matter. You are not asked to analyze the ideas. You are not asked to judge the ideas. You are merely asked to apply the ideas as you are directed to do. It is their use that will give them meaning to you and show you that they're true. So again, trust your own experience with this. Insofar as we can, right? We can't always rely just on our own experience, but when you are utilizing these principles, if you're utilizing them properly, your experience is going to reflect that, and you will be able to validate that it's true. So back to where I was reading, page 3, first full paragraph. In each and every moment, you cannot be a victim of what you see, and nothing is outside of you. So what are the implications of that? The implications of that is, well, it's obvious, right? That if I can't be a victim, then any of my stories I've told myself, any of the experiences I've had and the stories I've told myself about those experiences, usually, let me back up. When I've had a traumatic event, or when you've had a traumatic event, and maybe not even traumatic event, maybe just a disturbing event, or anything that where you feel like something was done to you, you have placed yourself into the role of victim. Whether that's, your partner cheating on you, or it's being mugged in a dark alleyway, or whether it's somebody tapping their pencil at work that's driving you nuts. All of those annoyances, all of those disturbances, and all of those traumatic events fall into the category of me putting myself in, they can fall into the category of me putting myself in the victim role in those stories. We can change those stories. And it may take a while for you to get to that point, so no one's saying you have to believe this right now. But what he's telling us here is that we can never be a victim. We can't, it's impossible for us to be a victim. And why is that? It's because we've chosen every experience at some level, even if unconsciously, or if you prefer, supra-consciously, above our current consciousness, from a higher state, from our higher selves, from soul contracts that we came in with, from any number of sources. And nothing is outside of us. Wow, if nothing's outside of us, that means everything going on around me is going on inside of me. Then, what really deserves questioning is this question, which is fundamental. Who am I? Who do I think I am? We'll get more into that as we go. Continuing with the first full paragraph, what you experience, you have directly and deliberately called to yourself. If you hold the thought, I do not like what I have called to myself, that's perfectly fine, for you have called yourself the experience of being in judgment of yourself. Merely look with the wonder of a child and see what it feels like and ask yourself, is this an energy I wish to continue in, or would I choose something else? That's power. That's power right there. That's power in your hands to shape your own experience. So anytime I'm disturbed, I can pause and ask myself, is this an experience I want to continue in? And then I can choose again. There are a few other steps in there, and we'll get into those details as we go, but he's planting seeds right now. Jesus is the master teacher that way. He drops in ideas and concepts very gradually. He starts to unravel them, to lay their foundation, and then he'll hit them with you full force later on, where now at that point you would have already been kind of prepared for the idea with his little dropping in, just dropping in little things along the way until you get to the full experience of what he's talking about, or the full explanation of what he's talking about. There was something else I was thinking of there that I wanted to mention. Oh, A Course in Miracles talks about this too. It talks about it a lot in a lot of different ways. But one of the ways it gives is it says, whenever we are at the moment of choice in a situation and we're leaning into a direction that's not in our best interest, or in one that's harmful, that it's not in our best interest, and that can take many forms, that Jesus is always right there, tapping us on the shoulder, whispering, my brother, choose again. I find that to be beautiful. So let's continue. For ultimately, when all possible choices within the dream of separation have been made, have been tasted, have been felt, and have been known, finally there emerges the still, quiet voice of spirit that speaks through the soul, whispering of the one truth, the one reality, the one love, the one peace, and the one bliss that is continual. After all possible choices have been made, we begin to wake up. When we reach a point in our spiritual development, in our evolution as a three-dimensional physical being, as a consciousness expressing in that form, when we essentially have had all the experiences and we're at a point of, you know what? I've done that. I've been there. I've done that. I don't need to experience that again or anymore. Then we begin to wake up. Then the soul begins to turn from the things of this created world. It begins to withdraw its attention from its attachments to all of the things it is called to itself. It begins to transcend its sense of identification with the vibrational frequencies it had only meant to play with and then took seriously. So that is reminiscent of the line in A Course in Miracles when it's going through its metaphysics and explaining its approach to the metaphysics of consciousness. And it talks about how the Son of God looked upon what had been made and remembered not to laugh. In other words, we took it seriously. Laughing is a more appropriate response because as a timeless, eternal, perfect, all-powerful consciousness being with our source, it's not possible for us to suffer. But we played this game so well and we made it so elaborate that we take on this amnesia where we forget that and it freaks us out. And we had just meant to play with this. Good news is it's still possible to just play with it once you get past a certain level of illusion. It is seriousness within the mind that is the creation of ego, and it is great seriousness that holds the vibrations of what you would no longer choose to experience within the field of your being, within the field of your soul. So that's that seriousness. You see, that's why I have up here that sign, laugh. It's my reminder to keep a sense of humor, to not take myself so seriously. As you, as the soul, the individual divine spark, begin to choose to withdraw the attention and the value you have placed upon all things, as you learn to simplify the nature of your own consciousness, as you realize that you can surrender into something that seems beyond you and that you can entertain the insane thought of trusting the invisible, you come more and more to be less and less. As you become less and less of what you thought you were, conversely, you become more and more of what your Father, Mother, Source, Creator, created you to be. The thought of perfect love and form. A channel, a simple vehicle through which the love of Spirit can shine forth. Your only task becomes the cleaning of your windows, the polishing of your floors, and the weeding of your garden so that that light can pour forth unimpeded. So there, he's already alluding to what he's going to develop later, that this is effortless. He's going to develop that idea later, that it requires, we don't have to put forth, we don't have to come up with the love. We do need to put it forth, where we'll want to put it forth. There's no need. I need do nothing. That's another idea that will be developed as part of this very principle we're talking about, but it's effortless is what I'm getting at, and that the love flows naturally to us and through us when we've removed the barriers, when we have cleansed ourselves of anything that blocks us. We don't have to generate it. It comes to us and through us. We're not the source of it. Although we may appear to be that way to others, we are channels. We are, I think that's well enough said. So the polishing of the floors and the weeding of your garden and the cleaning of your windows is just you keeping yourself in a state that allows that energy, that love to continue to flow through you naturally. That is our natural state. No longer will you find the need to defend perceptions you had identified within error. You will indeed know when you have come to that state of awakening. For you will be able to look upon all created things that you have experienced, all reactions you have ever held within the mind, all perceptions, all judgments, all desires that you have ever held for anyone or anything. And as they arise in your mind, they will not disturb your peace. I'd like to share with you right now that I have been fortunate enough through the use of these materials, through principles that I've used in these materials, to get to that place myself. And that is where I now live. I can look upon anything in my life that's gone by in the past, and I have had some significant barriers, there are traumas, there are places where I've held myself as a victim used to hold myself as a victim. We all have those, right? We've all been damaged. We've all been damaged. And I can look at all of my damaged areas in peace. Page 4. And you will smile. So in other words, we will look upon those areas and we will smile. We will be at peace. You will see that within your consciousness have arisen all saintliness and all devilishness. You have been both saint and sinner, and your happiness and your unhappiness have been merely an effect of where you choose to place your attention. Indeed, beloved friends, I come forth to meet you wherever you are because I have chosen to use the infinite power of consciousness given me of the Father, as equally as it is given unto you. So he's already implying there, anything he can do, we can also do. To discover how deep delight can be when the mind is focused only on seeing from and seeing only the mind of Christ. I have therefore called to myself all multitude of experiences, even when I walked upon your beloved earth as a man, to challenge myself, to test myself, to condition myself to rise above, to transcend all possible experiences that would distract me from the remembrance of who I am. So there too, he's giving us a little foreshadowing on what he's going to later explain, describing why he experienced the crucifixion. And here he goes into that a little bit already. By the way, my crucifixion was simply the climax of my own direct choice to be challenged by the events of space and time so that I could cultivate within myself the ability to see from and to see only the perfect purity of the mind of Christ. Now, if that isn't startling and mind-blowing to hear him saying that, anyone that comes to this material with a traditional Christian upbringing, Catholic, Protestant, non-denominational, whatever it might be, would recognize that you don't get taught this aspect when you go through Sunday school, when you are educated within your religion. In fact, this whole book would be blasphemous. It'd be heresy. Now, I'm putting descriptions, labels into those organizations' collective mouths. I haven't heard them say that about this material, so I don't want to create the wrong impression. But my thought is that this would to them be heretical. And having been part of them at one point, I don't see how they could see it otherwise. The point I'm trying to make with you is that in each and every moment, what you are experiencing in the realm of your emotions and mind, and the effects to a latter degree within the body, are there because you, from your infinite freedom, have simply selected that experience to focus your attention on so that you can see what the effects are. So we're doing this as an expression of a sort of curiosity that we have. We want to find out what it's going to be like. Be careful what you ask for, right? That comes to mind right away. The insanity does not come from having chosen to see something other than the mind of Christ. The insanity that you experience as your pain, your suffering, your seeking, and your dramas comes only from your mistaken choice to become identified with what arises in the field of your awareness. It's not a mistake that we chose to experience something other than the mind of Christ, something different. It's that we start to believe those experiences are who we really are. We become identified with them. And here he gives us his first labeling of this behavior as insanity. A Course in Miracles goes straight to the heart with that as well, telling us that we're actually, we're believing in an illusion, which is insane, and that makes us delusional. Anybody who's been exposed to or had experience with 12-step groups will recognize in this the second step, which makes a reference to sanity and our old behavior being insane. Well, he's using it here in the context of people who aren't necessarily even abusing substances or involved with somebody who's abusing substances. You therefore lose the sight of innocence, for all events are perfectly neutral and you are free to see them any way you want. All events are neutral. I cannot be a victim. Nothing is outside of me. These are pretty shocking principles, statements to hear, considering the way we're all taught and conditioned. The world doesn't teach us this. We don't learn this as we grow up. When a child is born, and many of you who are mothers know this, you can experience a depth of joy that is unspeakable. And as a father of 3 sons, I can tell you that's true for fathers as well. Likewise, you can also experience fear and contraction at the thought of having to be responsible for a child. That's true for any parent, or could be true for any parent in the right circumstances. When a loved one dies, and you experience grief and suffering, rest assured it is because you have chosen to contract your attention. Then all you see is the loss of an animated body, and therefore convince yourself that you have become separated from the loved one. I don't know if you in particular have lost anybody significant in your life yet to death. It will depend on your life circumstances and to some degree on the age that you are. But if you live long enough, you'll have this experience of watching people pass on. And it's never easy. It's never easy. I'm speaking as someone who has lost both parents, who has also lost my second child at the age of 18, my son, Cole. And there is definitely a contraction that happens. However, in hindsight with all of those, I see the tremendous gifts and the silver linings and the beauty in all of it as well. I was able to be present for my parents, for both of them when they passed, sitting in the same room with them. It's an experience we should all have, and preferably even more than once, so we can see that it's a natural process, and so we know what to expect for ourselves. But that's going off on a different tangent. What he's getting at here is that the body dies and the consciousness lives on. And I can attest to that as part of my own experience. So you haven't really lost them, in a sense. I speak from experience that separation is an illusion. Wait, I think I skipped some sentences. No, I didn't. Sorry. So I speak from experience that separation is an illusion. When death occurs in your plane, in that very moment, you still have the power to choose to recognize that something has changed and to shift your attention to a different faculty that the body could never possibly contain. One in which you perceive and hear and communicate with that spark of divine light, the soul, that seems to have given up the idea of trying to keep a physical form animated. This is imperative. In fact, it is the very first step of the way of the heart. So the first step in awakening, he's going to go on and develop, and we're going to conclude this video at that point. We are at the bottom of page 4. We'll be picking up next time at the top of page 5 with the first step in awakening. But for now, for today, for this video, I should say, that may be enough. And what's important to come away with it from this one is just beginning to look at how in your own life you've created your own experience, how you choose your own experience moment to moment. Indeed, moment to moment, you choose your own experience. And to begin to loosen your ideas up about what the limits are on consciousness, and to begin to open to the possibility that the body may be contained within consciousness, because nothing is outside of consciousness, right? Nothing, he's told us that already. And that's just the first, that's actually 3 pages worth of text. That's page 2, page 3, and page 4. So it's very rich material. It's not particularly dense. At least I don't find it that way compared to, say, a Course in Miracles type material. Or there's other books too that can be like that. But this is very rich. It's got a lot of content. So take it in slowly. Take it in at a pace comfortable for you, slow enough to allow yourself time to incorporate it, because he's laying foundations here for the ideas to come. So with that, I'm going to conclude today. Thank you all again for joining me. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. As I mentioned earlier, if you'd like to donate, there's a link in the description box below. If you want to contact me, there's a description box with that email address as well. It's, I'm forgetting now. I don't want to say the wrong address. It's brand new, so I can't remember exactly what I used. But it'll be down there. Thank you so much. You know, I love all of you with a divine form of timeless love that comes through me from the Father, from God, from Source, that's available to all of us. And that love is unconditional. It's for you and who you are, no matter where you are. And Spirit always meets us where we are. Thank you, and I look forward to the next video. Blessings to everybody.